Welcome back to KBC News Check, and thank you so much indeed for keeping me company together with my two guests, Dr. Isaack Hassan, a leadership and governance expert, and also we have lawyer Gibson Gisore, who is an advocate of the High Court and also a political and governance expert. We are putting things into perspective, actually in regards to the biggest news yet in regards to how the government is being run after PS Josephine Buru was fired yesterday by the president in regards to the KEMSA mosquito nets deal. And not only was she fired, also the whole entire board of KEMSA was sent packing, and now we have a new board and a new chairman who happens to be Thuge. I think no, Thige. Yeah, the new yes, and we are hoping in Nyakera, yes, Irongo Nyakera. Thuge is the new Central Bank of Kenya governor. Of course, the high cost of living is on every Kenyan's lips, and you'll have to pay more. You'll have to pay more. You'll have to pay more because of the fuel after the prices announced by EPRA. That is the day before yesterday. That is at night. And for the next 1 month, the fuel costs have also jumped. And to be specific, you pay more for fuel over the next 1 month following the increase of pump prices, following higher landed cost of super petrol and removal of subsidies on kerosene and diesel. The cost of super petrol is up by 3 shillings and 40 cents. Diesel has increased by 6 shillings and 40 cents, while kerosene has seen a significant jump by 15 shillings and 19 cents. Gentlemen, weighing in on what actually they have talked about, and looking at the fuel prices, in Nairobi 182, Mombasa 179, Mandera 195. We are edging towards the 200 mark. Eldoret at 182. You look at the diesel 168, 165, 181. We also headed to the 200 mark. Kerosene 161, 158, 174, and 168. To be fair, we almost headed to the 200 mark in all the fuel that we are using in the country, be it petrol, be it diesel, or be it kerosene. And there's something that I picked from the MCA there. He's talking about, indeed, yes, that we need short-term measure. Being one, he is still on the subsidies, and especially for kerosene, which have been scrapped as well. And looking at the finance bill as proposed, some of the cronies of the head of state have talked about we're not going to change even a comma or a decimal in that report and in that bill. But that will really bring about a lot of anguish in Kenyans, because they have talked about the maendeleo of wanawake woman. Treasury has talked about, Treasurer has talked about it's even becoming hard to put 3 meals on the table, even for salaried employees like us. Doc?
Yeah, I think as you can see from the Lakeside City, it's not only the Lakeside City that has this issue.
Yes.
And each and every other person, including my village in Takaba, Mandera West, the same cry is going on. It is true, increased living cost means many households will they have to cut back on their basic essential things. You know very well, a country like this, much of the thing is controlled by fuel. Fuel is a key thing that, initiates every other expenditure. For example, our factories will use fuel. The vehicles that are used, they use fuel. The transport system, and many other things that people rely on, including the basic essential, like the kerosene. You know very well we don't have much firewood, and we don't encourage people to use firewood at the moment because of environmental factor. And currently people are using kerosene, which is also one of the things that affects the environment. But we have no option. It's much better cutting trees. Using the kerosene is much better than cutting trees. And the common person who uses this fuel will have to cut on most of their basic needs. And you'll find that people will going to forego either a meal or even 2 courses of meal and live on one course of meal. And when you look at that keenly, I think this country, there are some things first I wanted to put clear. Tax is paid by consumers. And it's only the country that where tax is paid by consumers because you are charged tax for consuming. Not any of the rich people or that pays basically who sells items or goods and services to consumers pay the tax themselves. Tax is usually added on top of whatever you buy. Go to the supermarket, you will see the money you pay includes the tax. Yes. Ideally, in normal sense, it will have been the money you pay will be the cost, the actual cost of that commodity that you take will be the one which will going to be charged the tax on. That way we are able to reduce the cost of living. But if everything goes to the consumer, then life will be very hard. For example, I can't go to Mandera now because if I go to Mandera with a cost of 200 shilling per litre of fuel, means by the time I get there, that's 1,200 kilometers, and a car will be, you know, for example, my car, 1 litre just runs for around 6 to 7 kilometers per litre. That means then I'm going to use 45,000 to get home. Where will that money come from? You see now the way the cost of living is becoming more difficult for even the people who are the middle level class. Now, what about our common people, the pyramid there, the larger pyramid where the poor people, the people who cannot even afford $1 a day will have more challenge than us who can probably cut our costs slightly downwards to accommodate the situation. For them, they have nothing to cut and nothing to accommodate. Now we will turn this country into beggars. So I think one thing that we need to do is that we need to reduce costs in terms of our expenditures and reduce tax on key essential things for the basic consumers, the people in the lower pyramid. And then that way we are able to run a society that will live within the expected, livelihoods that they are able to run their common things. The other thing that I think I look at is that I don't know what happened. I mean, we have been told if there will be government-to-government engagement in terms of fuel and buying fuel with Kenyan currency, the cost will go a bit down. What I don't understand, on the media, what I heard, this I don't have a fact, but that was what the media was saying, is that clearing that commodity at the port has increased the cost. Why is it that the port is increasing the cost, yet the aim was to go and have this cut cost from the source so that we use our currency, and government to government, we thought the way we have been told we're going to reduce the cost. So if that was the case, then I think something is not right, something is not going on well, because there are some companies who are earlier on agents of those major companies who are supplying. We were told these ones were exploiting Kenyans, and now there were 2 companies that have been engaged and contracted to do this work, and we are seeing they are now exploiting more than even the previous ones, which we have never known that they were exploiting us more than these other ones. So the game is still the same, and I tend to think we need to cut costs in all aspects. We can still see, for example, let's start from the president. President has a huge motorcade whenever he's going somewhere. I think the basic thing is that you cut costs, therefore means you start from yourself. You lead by example. You lead by example. Right. So I think with our country, it's not very risky for the president to have 200 vehicles following him or 30 vehicles following him. I think basically, in principle, we want to keep his security well because he's a sample of the country. But the bottom line is that let's cut our expenditures. Right. The more we cut our expenditures, the better for the common person in the lower pyramid for him to have a comfortable life.
Gibson, and picking from where Doc has talked about, yes, indeed, we have a government-to-government a deal that among others, was supposed to see the cost of fuel come down and, of course, to strengthen the shilling. Well, it might not happen right now, but looking at the palm prices now and looking at them after the finance bill, because if it sails through, we have increased the VAT from 8% to 16%. So definitely the cost of fuel will go up. And I remember over the weekend I was in county number 14, Embu County, for the launch of Ngemi FM. And I was speaking with some of my colleagues that we have had an opportunity to work with. And they're telling me in the morning, you are eating food, not having tea and maybe some slices of bread, but they're eating food because they have to skip lunch. And those are salaried people. The pressure is even dire for people who are earning less than $1 a day, just like Doc has talked about. Are there any more intervention that can be done? Because at the end of the day, if at all the VAT is going on fuel, is going to go from 8% to 16%. In as much as the president the other day talked about our tax is one of the lowest at about 14%, and compared us to South Africa, Tunisia, and I think Morocco. In as much as we do that, we cannot compare that, because looking at the cost of energy, for example, in South Africa, they're even using nuclear energy. So the power costs are a little bit down. If the fuel goes from 8% VAT to 16%, it's not only going to affect fuel products, but it's going to affect other sectors as well.
I think, Bentry, what we need to look at is the aspect of much as the president gave those comparisons, we look at the countries he's comparing to their countries which have their systems running, and they are not in the same place where we are. But the advantage of staying in South Africa for some time, the issue is South Africa, you cannot compare South Africa. You know, South Africa produces almost more than half of the power consumed in the whole of Africa. So we are not in the same scale.
Yes.
And then they have like 2-3 ports which they rely on, and then they have coal which they use for powering their turbines to produce power, and coal they don't import. They just mine and use, which we don't have. So we are not in the same level with the South Africans. I think that will not be a good mix. You look at the other countries. In Morocco, you said Morocco is next to the Middle East, and the neighbors Algeria produce oil, so they could be able to get into a local arrangement with them. So there are factors working for these people, so that as much as their taxation might be high, there are some things which are highly subsidized. You could find that they don't pay for education. In South Africa, education is almost free up to university, and actually even universities were complaining that it should be totally free for everybody, which is not the case here. So a parent pays fees for everyone, for everything. He has to ensure that they feed, he has to ensure that he has to go to work. You see even employees who are salaried cannot be able to pay for a simple lunch. So that tells you that really the shoe has started pinching. So I think I don't agree with the president's example that we are not as taxed as these countries, because the circumstances in these countries are not the same as what we are having here. So as Dr. has said, I will want to agree with him that really there is a very big challenge. I have a couple of friends who cannot be able to drive their vehicles to the village to go see their parents. So we are also having even parents suffer because the kids. I have even some friends who have very good German machines who decide to use matatu now. I mean, you show up in the village, people wonder, did this guy go bankrupt? And you know, that already has made you look like you are not in control of your affairs, and that is really demeaning and making people look bad. So what we need to do as a country, really, I thought that the idea of government to government deal was something which was going to pay off, but clearly it's not. But then we also understand that government is pressed by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, who are lending. Some of these provisions are really their conditions. It's not like the president really decides to tax Kenyans. He's told that, I mean, if we have to get you some money, you have not done something. So for those people, they're not Kenyans, they don't care. So it's important that I think where the president is insisting, let's get our own money so that we can be in control of our affairs, because as long as we keep borrowing, there are more conditions which are dire and more hurting to Kenyans which are going to come, because we don't have a choice to provide basic services. We need to get the money. So if we cannot pay people who are in the public service, we need to borrow the money and pay them. And when we borrow, those are the conditions which come with it. So we are in a situation where we can't move forward and we can't move backwards. So that is the kind of tight situation I think is trying to work around, so that to ensure that we be able to generate enough revenue, we stop borrowing, so that we can now start subsidizing whatever it is we feel we need to subsidize. But the mechanisms he's using is what, I mean, I don't know whether it's really the best, because we feel that there are some other places he needs to look at which can be able to bring in more money and more sustainable without looking at taxation, because taxation in itself is akin to what Churchill said, that it's like somebody who is standing in a bucket and wants to lift himself up, which is not possible. But then I think being the president, he needs to really consult well with his economists. I'm not an economist myself, but things are not going well, and he needs to do something, and it's really upon him to actually ensure that whatever decision he makes is one which is going to help Kenyans at the end of the day.
Doc, and I remember during the interview on Sunday, the president said that IMF had actually advised him to borrow more, and he said, no, I'm not going to borrow more. And are we in a catch situation, just like Wakili is talking about? We cannot move back and we cannot go ahead. So a little bit, we are a bit stagnant, because even the economy itself is not quite moving yet. And looking at the cost of fuel now, and looking at what we expect if the finance bill sails the way it is, this is going to be more pain for the country.
Yeah, I think from the way he has expressed himself and how he took the issue of IMF,
of borrowing,
I think something is going on, and it's something that is challenging for him himself, because one side the country is in crisis with no resources or money to run. On the other hand, the donors or the IMF and the lenders, the people who will be giving us loans, are trying to put strict measures in terms of their conditions. And that sometimes put decision makers in catch-22. And I'm sure one way or another, IMF way will be the way to go, because they are the ones who are going to move you out of the crisis, but with conditions. And I'm sure the president must be thinking through the conditions they have put, and probably deliberating on which conditions he's able to carry and which one he's not able to carry for the betterment of this nation. If he doesn't say yes to all, but one way or another he will going to say yes to some, that means he will still make a way out of the current situation. But one thing that is likely to affect us in terms of the current crisis with fuel and as well as the cost of living and taxation is that there are many businessmen who are now trying to move to other countries. I know there are quite a number of businessmen. Myself, I know them. They have moved to some other countries. They're pulling out of this country, and they had a very huge factories, producing juice, producing, products that are consumable, and they were distributing all these products to East and Central Africa
because of the cost of power.
Because of the cost of power and because of cost of taxation. They have started now moving to those countries, some of the countries in Central Africa. I know there's a huge company that has moved to Congo. And, it's shocking. Congo is a country that is just coming up, but we have pulled them out of this place to go and, invest in that part of Africa. And what does that mean? A number of people will lose their jobs. That means if now 1,000 people lose their jobs, where will they go? And we have no jobs for them. And the essence of the Kenya Kwanza government was to create employment. 500,000, is that what sometimes back was in the limelight? And I think the only thing that now we can do is, I think, I have earlier on mentioned, the best thing for us is reduce our expense and make sure that where taxation is not very much applicable, we reduce it. And where we think that we must tax, let's tax them. But we must not make this side better and the other side collapse, and then move out of it. For example, Mandera, I think it was a very good news that we hear borders will be opened.
Yes.
I'm sure we're going to have a discussion if there will be time.
Yes.
But I want to link it to this current situation. I don't think if now we will be able to get our fuel from Nairobi or Mombasa to Mandera, because the cost will not be realistic. And that means then we'll be getting our fuel from Somalia or Ethiopia, which will be cheaper, and we'll be able to, do basic things in terms of, producing food in that area. And that way means then, you see the market has gone to the neighboring country, because you'll be buying hard currency from Somalia or Ethiopia, and then you'll be coming in the country to sell them. Actually, fuel, the cost of a fuel per liter is $1 in Mogadishu.
It's around 100 and something, yes. 120
there. 137 for now. Dollar has gone up slightly. 137, and that is a country with no, proper system. The government are struggling because there's nothing in place. But still, they are able to contain their tax. They are able to contain
because they know very
prices.
well that if these taxes go to the Mwananchi,
absolutely,
we're going to have issues.
Exactly. And
I'm still on the finance bill. The Kenyans have until 20th, and I think if we have the story on finance bill, because the government plans to lower the cost of living through a raft of tax proposals and the implementation of various policies. And I remember the majority leader saying that we are exempting liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, to make it affordable, and the use of dirty fuels. Let's go to the Mwananchi. Mwananchi has until 20th to give his or her own inputs. How can it be factored in? And can it be factored in to the point that we get rid of some of the proposals in that? Because looking at the majority leader at the Senate talked about, we are not going to change even a comma or even a full stop. It's going to sail the way it is. That is exactly what they want, and I'm quite sure that is exactly what the president wants. Wananchi, Wanjiko, who is going to get all these taxes?
I don't want to go into the sentiments of the majority leader of the Senate.
But can Wanjiko's voice be voiced enough in the finance bill, because there's public participation?
Yes, it will, and that's where I want to go with what Njue said. And Njue was very clear that whatever the Treasury comes up with as proposals, they are not final, and they can be looked at in a different way. That's where Parliament is a house of debate, where we will be able to discuss, agree to disagree, and see what we can be able to remove. Because we are also Kenyans, we know we need to listen to Mwananchi. There is the aspect of whether they can be listened to. Yes, they will be listened to, because the Constitution allows us much. Because if they fail to do that, then somebody can be able to go to court that indeed whatever it is that we put across or the finance bill is not representative of what the public expects, and that will cause more problems, because it will, once the finance bill has not been passed, you cannot start appropriating the monies which have not been factored in the finance bill. So that will delay the government structures and processes. It's not only in Kenya, it has happened even in the US. You remember in Trump's time, there's what is called shutting down the government. So sometimes even the governors have spoken as much. At some point, they were also trying to say that we're going to shut down counties. That means that they are not in agreement. There are some monies they have been expecting, they have not received it, they don't know. They are pressed for providing services which they cannot be able to provide since they are the people on the ground. So we don't want to see such a situation. And statements like the ones being, you've said, from the leader of majority of the Senate are grandstandings which cannot be able to help the situation. We need to go into this with an open mind, see what it is that we can be able to allow and what it is that we can be able to remove from that list, so that at the end of the day, we all live in this country and we don't want people to suffer so much, and then others will be, our government to feel like it's entitled to the monies which they want to run the government, and the mwananchi is suffering because government needs to be a representative of the mwananchi. That aspect of checks and balances must be able to be very well inculcated in Parliament, and it's unfortunate that the majority or leader is actually speaking that way, because he actually does not understand his role and does not understand the role of Parliament, because now he's speaking as government while he should be speaking on behalf of Mwananchi or having an open mind. And that is the challenge of leaders who we get from leaders who get into office and then all of a sudden change and forget that they have actually been elected. So that is on the first part. The second part is what Dr. has said, that at the end of the day, we need to really ask ourselves, we are doing all this, what are we achieving? Because we also need to compare ourselves with the rest of our neighbors. At the end of the day, we're going to have a situation where people are going to engage in engaging in adulterating fuel, and that is still going to be disadvantageous to the government because it won't be getting the tax it wants, and then to the mwananchi will be consuming these particular fuels. Because whichever way you need to have your vehicle on the road to deliver so that you get paid. So if you don't, if there is a way, somebody promising to get you, then there are those people who live on the other side. There's those people who live near the border points. You know, vehicles have not been stopped to go across. You can go across, you fuel, full tank and come back. So as Njue has said, there is the aspect of Somalia, and now that we are opening the borders, I think we'll have more business, we'll be giving more business to someone in terms of fueling and coming back. So, and Ethiopia and the Tanzania and the like. So we need to also make these particular decisions bearing in mind what are our neighbors doing, because at some point you find that fuel passes through Kenya and goes to Uganda, and then Uganda is way cheaper than the fuel here. So people will opt to go and fuel in Uganda and then come back, so that they can be able to run their affairs. We don't want such a situation, because we'll be losing money instead of getting the same taxes which we expect. So government needs to be very deliberate and clear what it is that they want to achieve and how far can they go to achieve that, in the paradigm where they have to consider the aspects of uplifting mwananchi, and the mwananchi to be able to do their business without hindrance, and also getting their tax, so that it's a balanced equation, not one where you tell us that we are not going to change anything. I mean, taxation, there is a rule which in law which says there should be no taxation without representation. But now if you post figures on me, it means you're not representing me. You need to listen to me so that I tell you this is the much I can be able to offer, so that we agree to disagree and get to some place where we are at a balance.
Sure, and gentlemen, allow me to tie this to the new Central Bank of Kenya governor, where former National Treasury PS Dr. Kamau Thuge has been nominated as the 10th governor of the Central Bank of Kenya to take over from Dr. Patrick Njoroge, whose tenure ends next month. And Dr. Thuge, who is an economist, has served in senior roles within fiscal, monetary, and economic policy-making positions, both locally and abroad, and has been serving as a senior advisor and head of fiscal and budget policy within the presidency, and is also a member of the President's Economic Council. The incoming Central Bank governor was interviewed for the post alongside Dorcas Motonyi, Harun Sirima, Edward Sambili, Nancy Onyango, and Aidan Mohamed. President William Ruto has transmitted Dr. Thuge's nomination to the National Assembly for consideration as set out in the Constitution. Gentlemen, one of the key roles I believe the Central Bank of Kenya governor will have is to try and strengthen the shilling. And at the end of the day, if we strengthen our shilling, why we are in this position we are is because we also have a weak shilling. So if we strengthen the Kenya shillings, we can offload a lot of pressure on the shilling, and subsequently we can be able to at least manage some of the things that we have, because partly why the cost of fuel is quite high is because we have a weak shilling. What do you think, gentlemen? Some of the roles that, what is first thing you believe that the new CBK governor will have to do? It's coming at a very torrid time.
First, I want to congratulate Kamau Thuge, because he's been in the realms of the treasury and around treasury issues for long. I'm also now informed that he worked with the IMF for quite long, from around 80s to around early 2000. I mean, that's quite a long time. And there's a tendency that now we are fully relying on ex-employees of IMF or World Bank to fit into, I don't know whether that's where we have had an affinity for their loans or what. But
yeah, because it has been
they have been too much.
And the outgoing governor was, I believe it was
actually
an
advisor to the director of IMF.
Oh, IMF, yes.
Yes. So these fellas, I'm wondering what is the connection, because now we expect things to be better, but we are getting loans and loans and loans instead of. And now we hope that he will be able to deviate from the script and be able to tell us how we can be able. But Bentroy, I think there's also some very important point I wanted to put across, that on the issue of the shilling. His first responsibility will be to stabilize the shilling so that we can be able to balance and see. There's a tendency that Njoroge, the living, used to give me some assurance. When he could speak, you could see somebody who understands the situation. And in most cases, things were within his control, till now that things are now getting out of hand. I don't know whether he slept well. He knew that he's going to get out. But then he also told us that there were some challenges when we were having close to election. There was some malpractice, which were, though we have not seen any prosecutions yet. So this one comes in, we expect him to do a good, clean job. We expect him to ensure that, because with the situation we are having, we are going to have banks start recording losses, and you know that's loss of revenue, or start engaging in malpractice. So we will be able to see him be able to strengthen the conditions, the fiscal monetary policies, which will work together with the board of the central bank. We remember now the central bank is also run by a board, which I don't know whether the term of the guys of Nyaoga has come to an end. We'll be able to expect somebody else to take over, so that we can, because this is where really the games are to be played to ensure that our economy gets back to its feet. The kind of advisory I will also be expecting them to advise government, because everybody is talking about taxing, but then if you need money to come into this country, you don't look inwards, you look outwards. We should be discussing. I was really surprised that the trade minister was talking about us exporting, is it 7,000 heads of cattle to the Middle East? Why are we exporting? And yet we have a KMC. Why don't we just have these animals slaughtered here? We sell the meat so that we get more money and we get jobs, because we will be getting jobs and we will be getting the foreign exchange. Because if the KMC is not enough, why don't we add some more KMCs so that we can be able to we can be able to get this particular money? There is a sense in which that I expect agriculture to be picking up, especially horticulture. During the Kibaki era, it really picked up so well. We were getting a lot of money, because other than tea, horticulture was contributing, I think, the second largest foreign exchange, and other than tourism also, whereby now we are not seeing incentivizing the people who are doing horticulture so that they can export more. They have been complaining that KQ is exploiting them in terms of carrying the flowers to wherever. So we need to see some proactive steps, because these are things which can bring money so that we don't tax our people more. We need to see people, of course, people being encouraged to set up light industries, which we can be able to manufacture things which can be able to sell even to our neighbors in the region. Remember, Tanzania has been able to increase their sales to Kenya than while Kenyans have been reducing. Those are some of the things we should be sitting and saying. We have our neighbors whom we are trading with, and we are losing business while they are gaining. They are doing more business with us, and we are doing less with them.
Yes.
Where did the rain start beating us? How can we be able to even get a road to Juba to stop us passing through Uganda, so that we can be able to deliver our goods to Juba quickly and be able to. We used to be the biggest trading partners with Uganda. We are no longer. These are some of the small things we need to be looking at. Because the Southern Sudan came up, and then I'm really glad with the situation with Somalia really is a bit stabilizing. Once we open the border posts, we should be able to be discussing whether we can be able to even do a road with the donors. We do a road to Kismayu. We have a road so that we can have meaningful trade. Yeah. You know, with a road being there, even the terrorists run away because they are being exposed. They want to operate in the dark. Yeah. When you do a road, these people will run off. So those are some of the things we need to be exposed, because we are having a military there. The military should be able to facilitate our interests. Because once you bring in the money economy, business is able to thrive. Nobody will be willing to carry a gun while he can be able to set up a shop and sell and get money. Indeed. Yes, those are some of the things.
It's a good observation, because when the Kenya and Somali border was closed, it was majorly because of security issues. And I would like you, Doc, to actually come in on this. The border points in Mandera, Kiunga, and Ras Kamboni were shut over runaway insecurity. Now the CS yesterday had some good news for both Kenyans and Somalis, and especially where we are talking about this Mandera, Kiungani, and Ras Kamboni. In the next 90 days, we expect the border to be open. Of course, there are some concerns in terms of security, but there is also bigger concerns in terms of business. Kindly talk about
Right. First and foremost, I would like to thank the professor for thinking twice and noting the importance of having those borders open for the betterment of the communities living around the border and Kenya at large.
Yes.
Somalia has been our business hub as Kenyans for so long, including the Magendo time when clothes were coming from Somalia and they were coming to Kenya through a difficult time, when others were coming from India and they were easily sailing here, and Kenyans were being sold to a very high cost, and people could not go into a shop and buy a shirt of their choice. Somalia was easy to bring those garments and sell to Kenyans and put on a very good cloth like any other person, whether you are able or not. Secondly, the business that goes on in Somalia does not produce much. And the fact that they used to have very huge farms in the southern part of Somalia, where they used to produce bananas and sugar and other things. This is no longer there because of the long-term, war that they have gone through. But most of their things, they import it. Everything that is used in Somalia, with the exception of some few vegetables and here and there, most of it are imported. And that means then, if we open our doors as Kenyans from this aspect of border, areas, border products from outside, you will have to buy it with hard currency. So you change your money into hard currency and now start buying products from outside. That way, the cost will still increase. You sell out, the less pressure on the shilling, and the higher chance of the new governor, reducing the dollar against the
shilling. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. This is a discussion that we're going to have because at the end of the day, the Kenya-Somali border, after almost 12 years, has been reopened, but in phases in the next 90 days, as announced by Professor Kithure Kindiki, who is the Interior Cabinet Secretary. We have also looked at a number of issues, including the sacking of health PS, the high cost of living, and also the finance bill. Remember, you only have a couple of days because on 20th of this month, the public participation will be concluded, and from there on, we will leave the biggest chunk of the work to our members of parliament. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.